Jackie Brady, an Executive Director at Family and Relationship Services Australia, and we are hosting this First Nations series of presentations. Importantly, before we begin, I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land of which we are situated, that's FRSA, and that's the lands of the Ngunnawal and the Ngambri peoples. And I pay my respects to their elders past and present. And I also pay my respects to elders throughout the lands of Australia, knowing that we are meeting from various places across Australia. I acknowledge the waterways, the land, the sky, and all who inhabit this place, this country. I acknowledge their ancestors and elders and recognise those who continue to protect and promote Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture. And I also wish to pay my respects to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us online today. I acknowledge the past and I stand together with First Nations people in a true expression of reconciliation and hopes and aspirations for the future. So I am delighted today that we have Lorelle and Jayde joining us. Lorelle Bennett is the Manager of Children and Families North, and she's been part of Anglicare SA for 7 years working with children, families and communities. And she has 15 years previous experience from New South Wales and Queensland in working with children, families and communities. Jayde Milburn is a community development worker with Communities for Children Playford, and she's been part of Anglicare SA for the past 2 years. Prior to her joining Anglicare SA, she was an Aboriginal Community Education Officer in working there for 5 years. And Jayde has 15 years previous experience of working with children, families and community. So once again, thank you both very much for being here to share your knowledge and your wisdom. I'm going to step offline. I'm not going to describe your abstract because I figure people have read it if they've signed up to listen, and they will know more about it as we're learning. So as I said, I'll go off camera and off mic, and I'll come back at the end to help with any Q&A. For those online, do pop any questions either in the chat and Q&A, and I'll keep an eye on that. Thank you both. I'll see you in half hour.
Thank you. Thanks, Jackie. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. I will start with a Kaurna acknowledgement. So we would like to express our gratitude to the Kaurna peoples for their continuous care of this ancient country, for the thousands of generations and for the sharing of this land that was never ceded. We recognise and respect the wisdom of Kaurna elders past, present and those to come, and extend this to all First Nations people and their living cultures. We walk softly alongside First Nations people as allies committed to seeking guidance, listening with purpose and acting with courage in our future together. I would like to introduce Jayde. Jayde is a community development worker with Communities for Children in Playford, and she's been with us for 3 years now. She's just had her extra year celebration. Jayde is going to share her journey to becoming a community development worker and the importance of the relationships she's developed along the way in providing positive outcomes for families in our community. So Jayde, alongside with our community development team, has facilitated 3 now very successful Aboriginal Community Education Officer Days in the Playford area for our local Aboriginal Community Education Officer partnership. So I'm going to pass it over to Jayde now, and she will talk to you about her story. Thank you, Lorelle.
Okay, so my name is Jayde Milburn, and I'm a proud Wiradjuri woman who was born and raised on Kaurna land in South Australia. I'm lucky enough to still live and work in the community in which I was raised, and to me this is a great privilege. I would like to talk to you about my journey to Communities for Children and how the relationships I developed as an ACO have impacted on the work I do with Communities for Children now. So let me first quickly explain what an ACO is. So this is a community-based role that advocates for children and families for anything regarding the child's education and health and wellbeing of the whole family. So I started as an Aboriginal Community Education Officer in 2017 at my children's school. My role as an ACO was a community-based role, so it was really important that I knew about all of the programs and services in our community so that I could share that information with children and families that I was supporting. The role of an ACO in schools is so very valued by the community, They are there to advocate for the children and families and provide culturally appropriate support and to assist the First Nations children in their learning. For me, the connection with Communities for Children first started when I was an AECO, where I met Anna, who was also a community development worker at the time in the Playford C4C team. So I was given a Communities for Children newsletter, and it had Anna's picture and her phone number on the back. And when I saw her picture, it was a beautiful picture and she looked so friendly. So I contacted her, and that's where I was provided with lots of information and flyers of the programs and activities and services that were available to our local community. So my relationship with Communities for Children built from there. With the support of Playford Communities for Children, I was able to establish a culturally safe playgroup with a focus on early childhood development. And this is when I realised what an amazing program Communities for Children really was. To be able to tailor a playgroup for our community that focused on a culturally safe environment, which included a yarning circle and culturally appropriate resources. So the playgroup provided culturally appropriate activities and early learning opportunities for our vulnerable children and families. And as an AECO, I was able to support many families to attend. And to this day, the playgroup is still up and running, which is really great. I've been in the Playford Communities for Children program for 3 years now. So within this role, I drew on my existing relationships with AECOs and with my own experience in the role, identified a gap in the knowledge and relationships that Communities for Children had with the AECO partnerships. This was an area that was close to my heart, and I could see that the strong relationships between these two amazing and important services, the positive outcomes that would follow for our community. Communities for Children Playford has 3 school partnerships across the Playford region. So a school partnership is a cluster of schools that work together in that region. So in consultation with key people in those partnerships, so one being Glenys Warrior, who is an Aboriginal Community Education Team Leader, and Carrie Fleming, who is an Aboriginal Services Engagement Officer, Communities for Children proposed holding an AECO Day. So we invited AECOs across our partnerships for an opportunity to meet and network and come along with Communities for Children organising for Anglicare SA services in the area to come and present information about their services and what they can provide for families. So along with Glenys and Carrie, who you will hear from in a short video shortly, talked about what they would like out of the day, and in consultation with them, we organised it together. So this day was a massive success with 65 AECOs from across the partnerships attending. So I believe the day was so well attended because of the relationships and trust I had built with Glenys and Carrie and their involvement and planning on the day. So Communities for Children Playford have now held 3 AECO days. The second one being, that was 2023, a day of vicarious trauma training for all AECOs. So the vicarious trauma training was presented as it became apparent in conversations with Glenys and Carrie that vicarious trauma was a significant issue across the partnerships, and the AECOs would benefit greatly from the training and understanding of what vicarious trauma actually is. The one that we've held recently was a wellbeing day for AECOs, which again was organised in consultation with Carrie and Glenys. A lot of the AECOs again didn't have an understanding of their own self-care and wellbeing, so that was really good for us to be able to provide that as well. So the benefits of holding these days have been multi-pronged, with benefits for AECOs in networking with other partnerships and having access to information and services to provide to the families they support, and a flow-on effect of strengthening of relationships across the wider Communities for Children Playford team, with all community development workers in our team developing stronger connections with AECOs in the schools that they support. So through having those strengthened connections with AECO partnerships, we're getting invited into more schools to engage and support families through their community engagement activities, and seeing more families attending Communities for Children programs and activities, and this is evident in our data. So we do have a short video for you to watch. So this is with Glenys and Carrie, who I mentioned earlier, and also Kiara and Rihanna, who are both AECOs in our local primary schools.
Having Jade with the Playford Communities for Children's program was really a good starting point for us. So Jade, having the background in education, has come across to that program and united us together as a really strong, powerful team. The staff have been much more informed about what they've offered for our families, because before that, our Aboriginal staff in schools didn't know what they could access. So when Jade had come in with the Playford Communities for Children program, gave us much more options of support for our families. The relationships that have been formed have been absolutely magnificent. We were able to go to Jade and say, you know, there's a couple of examples of homelessness people and looking for housing and stuff. So with the support from Jade telling us where to go and who to go to was really beneficial for our families. So the relationship between Playford Communities for Children and Aboriginal education was strengthened so much more because of that relationship. One of the quotes that we've got from the What Works project that we had years ago is that you can't have a partnership without a relationship, and you can't have a relationship without a conversation. And you've got to start the conversation, because that's where the starting point is, which is what we in education and Playford Communities for Children have done. So it's an amazing how one Aboriginal person can make such a difference in a big organisation such as the Playford Communities for Children.
So we were lucky enough to be a part of two significant days, one being a service provider day that Playford Communities for Children hosted. So that provided our staff with information on different services around that they could support our Aboriginal families in the north. And the other day was a vicarious trauma training day, which obviously our staff work with children and families that, you know, have experienced trauma. So that was two, you know, great days that helped our staff. A good news story is that, you know, I've been working with many Aboriginal families, and one family in particular had experienced homelessness. So they were lucky enough to be placed in community housing, but obviously going into a new home, they didn't have many things, you know, for the house. It was going into winter. It was a single father, and with, you know, having the service provider day with Playford Communities for Children, I was able to access the Quickest Warmth program to get, you know, bedding, warm clothes for the kids, and household goods, you know, to start this single father off with his new journey in his new home. We also provided with updates through newsletters and, you know, constant email chains through the network that Jade has established with the Playford Communities for Children. So a lot of our staff are now well informed of services. They're not always sort of going through us or, you know, Glennis. It's more so they're given the information so they can act on it themselves and, you know, use their intuition.
It's given us the opportunity to build connections and relationships which led us to engage in other programs and services in the area that we weren't aware of beforehand.
Communities for Children Playford offers several support services for our families in the Playford area. By families participating in these, they experience several positive outcomes, such as having access to resources. So families have access to health services and childcare services and parenting services. It also enhances social connection, so families are able to connect with families in similar situations, and it also improves parenting skills, so there are lots of parenting workshops that families can participate in. Overall, the families involved in Communities for Children Playford lead to stronger and more resilient families and a more supportive environment.
So as I said previously, when I moved into Playford Communities for Children, I was lucky enough to bring with me all of the contacts that I've made in our community over my years in education. keeping these connections going is so very important, not only to the work that we do, but also to the community that we are supporting. Playford Communities for Children now have 148 Aboriginal education workers on our main email mailing list that we share information to them for our community partner funded programs, larger community events, and any other local services that they'll benefit from.
Thanks, Jade. I just want to, like, how lucky are we to have those amazing women working with us and what we do, and I want to thank them again for participating in our video, because we're very, very lucky to have them, and I know Jade does a lot of work with them, so it is amazing. Jade and I would like to end our presentation with a significant outcome that we've noticed from our strengthened relationships with our AECO partnerships. So Jade sits on our Reconciliation in the West organising committee, and so through C4C, Jade working with that, and we as the C4C team will generally do a deadly colour run. However, weather permitting, we have backup plans when the weather doesn't permit for that. But through this, Jade ensures that she connects with all the community education officers across multiple school partnerships. So she ensures that we know all the students that are attending, that we have registration so that all the children can participate. They all have shirts and hats and glasses, and everything's all organised and ready for them, so they can come on the day, come up to our stall. They've got times booked in, and they get to do their colour run. It runs beautifully, because in our last one, we had 465 registered participants that attended on the day. So it was very, very busy, and we were all covered in colour. So this event is an amazing event, and it gets bigger and bigger every year. So Jade, we're starting to have conversations about what's going to happen for next year. And we're expecting higher numbers next year, and every year we make relationships with another school or another partnership that then we engage those children into these activities, and then through them get information into their families. And so it just is, I think, because of these relationships, it highlights that, you know, the importance that, you know, AECO's relationships with family, and that families have greater access to programs and services in the area. So we'd like to thank you for your time today, but I'd like to just quote Glenys from the video, which she said, "You can't have a partnership without a relationship, and you can't have a relationship without a conversation, and you've got to start the conversation." I think that's really important. And I also have another quote that we had a Communities for Children forum earlier this year, and somebody said there, and I thought it was really important, and it is very true, is that when you need a relationship, it's not the time to build it. So thank you very much for listening, and if there's any questions, please let us know.
Thanks, Jade and Laurel. That was very interesting to hear about how you set up those systems and processes around the work and C4Cs. And one of the things I was curious about, what sort of numbers of people that you were dealing with. So the last session, or in training day that you ran, there were 140, I think you were saying, involved in that. I mean, and for me, it's a really strong example of how you've integrated well into the education system, because one of the reflections this webinar is not about me, but I do reflect that one of my bugbears in the system is that we do operate in silos. You know, we've got the social services sector, we've got the education sector, we've got the health sector, and so not only is this a great example of your ability to connect into community and families locally, that intersectionality with education. So one question I have is, it seems that you're going school by school. Is that the way that you've had to approach this, or has it actually been with the Department of Education that you've been working with?
So because our schools work in clusters,
okay,
so there's different partnerships. So within the region that we're funded for, there's 3 separate partnerships.
Okay.
And they all sit under, or the Aboriginal education teams all sit under one manager. So that's been really beneficial for us to continue the connection that I already had with Glenys and Carrie, because they fit in head office. So quite often they'll filter that information out, even regarding days with the ACEOs, that will come from them. But from that, I've built our email mailing list where I can have each partnership in a mailing list and I connect through them that way.
Yeah. And I suppose what I'm getting or trying to get at is it's quite systemic in its approach. Like it's sort of, there is always the value of grassroots warm referrals, don't get me wrong, but it sounds as if you've really been very successful in getting that high level buy-in, if I can describe it that way, from the ladies involved, and they are very much your advocates within the the education system.
Yeah, the benefits they've seen from these days and the feedback that we've got, especially from the vicarious trauma and the self-care.
Yeah.
The importance of that, because vicarious trauma is massive, and there was no training and no information out there for them. So the feedback we got, like we could run that vicarious trauma training, 5 times a year and that all the time.
Yeah. And so that was one of the other things I was going to ask, is that when you run that training, is that something that you deliver in terms of, or do you bring in external providers? Yeah.
We get external providers who are professionals in the areas.
Yeah. So who have you used for that training?
That training we used Todd Stokes, and he was amazing.
Yeah.
Definitely, look him up, and he was an amazing facilitator and connected in so well, and he's quite often working in different states facilitating training all over Australia.
Yeah, because it certainly is a growing area, and I suppose the other measure from workforce, and I think it comes from Fair Work Commission and changes, is we have to have as employers greater understanding. Not only understanding, but that we have systems and practices in place that take care of the psychological health of our workers as well. So I can only envisage that that's really got to be, apart from it being a good idea, there's a very strong impetus for that training to be happening in our sector and the school sector and all sectors that are experiencing that vicarious trauma as well.
Yeah.
So, it sounds like there are wonderful success stories. And I think for me, the other big takeaway, because I think the beauty of the family and relationships sector and services sector and, the range of providers in the C4C space and all of the programs is that whilst that program is similar by virtue of its guidelines right throughout Australia, the thing that gives it its uniqueness in place is that interconnection at the local level with the local providers. So hearing that you're able to make connections in with your homelessness services that you deliver, and the getting set up packages in the keeping them warm package that was being able to be provided. That's, I think, what gives it its unique flavour too, that you're able to tap into, and I'm assuming not just your resources, but other C4CFP providers in your network. That makes that all happen as well.
Yeah.
So in terms of understanding just the nature of those dynamics, do you have a formal MOU or anything in place with the education system?
No.
Okay.
No, this is something that we just run with them.
Yep. And I suppose the other thing you were explaining about your colour run, Laurel, and the way that you've organised the registrations and so forth, I suppose that also helps for the benefit of being able to report into your decks and your group work when you've got such a good organised event and you're able to capture that.
Yeah. And it makes the day run a lot smoother, and we can get more children through because Jade has them all organised. She is absolutely amazing in that day, but they all have their packs are all delivered to the schools with all the right sizes for t-shirts and everything for the children beforehand. So that way everyone's registered and has a time slot and they arrive, and it works like clockwork.
Yeah.
I mean, we do a review, and every year we find something that we want to do a bit differently, but numbers, we have like 460 children in a you know, for our block is a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great, I mean, they love the colour run too. You always, there's always lots of smiley faces, and the kids all seem to love it as well. So it was from the start, a really great idea, no doubt. And it's really seems to be getting legs, and more people are getting involved in it. So that's, and, you know, kudos again to you.
And then, Jade, do you want to talk about what our wet weather like?
Yeah, so
Because this year it was pouring.
yeah, so for the event, the weather's normally not great, but this year there was really torrential rain the day before. So we had to, obviously the schools had all their packs already with their hats, t-shirts and sunnies. So we changed the activity. It had to be an indoor activity. So we changed it to an Aboriginal art activity where the children could still bring their t-shirts along. We had some Aboriginal art and symbols all printed out and laminated on all the tables for the children, and they came along and told a story on their t-shirts with the Aboriginal artwork. So that was an amazing activity, which was such a great learning experience for the children as well. So that for that one, we had over 500 children participate.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're doing really great work, and I think the reality is when we're able to get that crossover too, and it's not, you know, from coming from the education background to into this area, it sounds like you've brought so much with you, and it's been so important in helping this program and those connections flourish. So I hope you're very proud of the work that you do. It sounds amazing.
Yeah. And we're very proud of her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's lovely. That's lovely. I'm not sure. I'll do a quick check on the Q&A whether we've got any questions. But I think the beauty is that we have your contact details, I think, that we make available. So if anyone is online that hasn't had a chance, or the questions are still forming, or if there's people that watch this video and have questions, you're happy for them to reach out to you.
Absolutely.
And seek any advice. Yeah, I just think it's, you know, amazing that you've been able to cross what are often those really hard set silos. So yes, as Robin says, two deadly ladies, keep up the great work. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we might leave it there if there's nothing further. But thanks again for joining us today. And look forward to hearing more and more about the amazing work that you do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Jackie.
Bye
Take
for
care.
now.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.